Podcast. This is the only podcast that dives deep into post-purchase marketing to help Amazon sellers increase sales, ranking, reviews, and profits. It's everything that happens after the initial sale that makes a difference. We call this the back end.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Post-Purchase Pro podcast. I'm your host today, Dylan Pettijohn, along with my co-host Sam, and we're going to be interviewing Ben Leonard. He is the classic millennial entrepreneur. He built a business from his laptop in his spare time, but the difference is he grew that into an international seven-figure brand and exited after 3 years. And now he's going to go and do it all over again with his e-commerce consultancy company, benleonard.pro, and e-commerce brokerage, ecombrokers.co.uk. And without further ado, let's bring in Ben. But before we do that, Sam, he's got one more title that we need to mention.
Yeah. There's one more title, very important title. He's also the 5-time winner of the e-commerce Most Handsome Man Award. So let's bring on Ben so you all can judge him and see if that's true.
Hey guys.
Hey Ben.
Multi-award winner here 5 times. Allegedly most
yes.
handsome guy in e-commerce. So I heard. Yeah. Apparently voted stellar poll. You can blame Danny McMillan.
So Ben, there were a few different things that I was reading about before the call, just because I wanted to get a little bit more info before we really dive into this. And one of the articles I read said that you were a dolphin fanatic and that you studied ecology in school. And I thought that was pretty interesting, coming from a science background and then coming over to the e-com space, because the two do not usually correlate.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm from northeast Scotland, right? And where I live, right by the sea, we have a bunch of dolphins. And also where I live is a small city called Aberdeen. It's an oil town. So it was almost inevitable that I was going to end up working in the oil industry, but I was working in it from the environmental advisor side. So my job was to help oil companies get greener. And before I did that, I studied ecology. And when I studied ecology, I wrote my thesis on the population of dolphins around here. So at one point I was a professional dolphin nerd, and yeah, now I'm just an amateur dolphin nerd.
Gotcha. That's pretty awesome. At least you were on the good side of working with oil.
Yeah. I mean, everyone that I worked with was generally good, but they often didn't like it when I told them, no, you cannot just throw that chemical in the sea.
So there was a lot of arguments there. Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
I was just going to say, going from that to starting in the e-com space, did you have any experience at all with e-com beforehand?
No, I was so naive to e-com. I thought that when you bought something on Amazon, you were buying it from Jeff. I didn't know that other people could sell on Amazon. I had a big change in circumstances. So basically what happened was in about 2012, I had this idea to start a fitness brand. And so I did absolutely nothing about it, because, we grow up in society believing that you go to school, you might go to college or university, you get a job in whatever you've studied, you work for the man, you retire, and then you die. And entrepreneurs are other people, aren't they? They're people with business degrees. They're people who have inherited a business. Maybe they're inventors, or they've got a whole bunch of, they've inherited, they've been born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They have a whole bunch of money, and they can go start up some cool startup, right? Go at Shark Tank or something. Who knows? You think that they're other people. So I had my idea, and of course I did nothing about it. But then in early 2016, my life changed. I got really unwell with a heart condition. I'm totally fine now, but I had to stop my work. I had to stop my fitness training hobbies. I did a lot of, at the time, weightlifting, CrossFit, boxing, and I had to stop while I recovered. And so that's when I decided, well, I'm going to do something with that idea, and I'll try and create a fitness brand. So I started trying to develop these products and sell them into gyms, and it was a complete disaster. I got laughed out of all these gyms that I pitched to. And then I realized, hold on a minute, I can sell online to other people just like me. And fast forward 3.5 years, the business was doing $6 million a year in sales. And at that point, I exited, and yeah, my life changed quite significantly. And obviously, I no longer work in oil and gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, transition, like you were just saying, like it was pretty hard to break in the market just through grassroots or trying to sell these local gyms, but finding that online, it really boosted your ability to to actually sell that product and get it out there. So I guess with that in mind, with Amazon and utilizing Amazon, how are you able to leverage, Amazon's tools that they have for sellers to kind of transform your business into what it is now?
I mean, love Amazon or hate Amazon, right? We all have a love-hate relationship with Amazon. We love it because it brings us all these eyeballs and all these people who are ready to buy stuff. And we hate it because we're always banging our head off a brick wall for some new thing that they've brought in to make our lives more difficult. Some new fee, or somebody at seller support doesn't understand our issue. But I was able to very quickly get in front of lots of other people just like me. And at the time that I started in 2016, it was a really interesting time because as I got more and more into it, I found that my competitors were really not building brands. They were just kind of selling crap on the internet. Whereas I didn't remember when I started, I was trying to start a brand to sell training gear directly into gyms. Whereas a lot of the people on Amazon had realized that you could create an account on Amazon and just sell stuff. And so they weren't building brands. They were just trying to make a quick buck. So I found it really easy to compete against them because I started to connect with my customers and build a legit brand identity. And that's kind of interesting because now everybody's talking about brand and how selling stuff doesn't work anymore and you need to build a legit brand. I started doing that in 2016. And I leveraged Amazon as a sales channel. It was phenomenal, but I also used it as a place to acquire customers and then get them to know, like, and trust my brand and want to find out more about my brand outside of Amazon. So on our website, on our Instagram, on our YouTube, or wherever it may be, for whatever is relevant for your brand.
Right. Okay. Sorry, Dylan. Go ahead.
That makes sense. I mean, that's one thing I've heard a lot of people talking about, whether people had been focused on white label or anything like that beforehand. Throwing a sticker on something is not a brand. A brand is a feeling. A brand is a specific group of people that really enjoy your product and are obsessed with that kind of thing. And building that around them, it's so much more than just, like I said, throwing a sticker on something and then throwing it on Amazon and expecting to get sales. And do you think that was the biggest needle mover for you when you were actually building your brand before the exit?
It was huge. Yeah, it was possibly the biggest. Yeah. Because I was on a podcast the other day, right? Somebody asked me a similar question, and I came up with a really silly analogy off the cuff, but I'm going to use it again because it kind of made sense. Imagine Amazon is a goldfish bowl, and then imagine there's a hamster wheel in that goldfish bowl, and you've got like a goldfish hamster hybrid stuck on this hamster wheel. Okay, let me explain what's going on here. So many people, e-commerce business owners who are selling on Amazon, are stuck on this hamster wheel. They have a half decent listing, that's fine. They have a half decent product, that's fine. And then they get a sale from organic or PPC, whatever it may be. And then they're chasing after the next sale and the next sale and the next sale and the next sale. And they do absolutely nothing to build a relationship with that customer. So although that customer bought widget A from you, when it's time for them to buy widget B, they've forgotten all about your brand. You might get lucky and they might buy from you again because they find you on Amazon. Chances are they're going to buy from somebody else. So you're stuck on that hamster wheel. And then you're also stuck in this goldfish bowl, because if you were smart, your business wouldn't be in a goldfish bowl. It would be in a pond connected to other ponds by streams, connected to rivers, connected to lakes, connected to the ocean. And by that, I mean you're building relationships with your customers outside of Amazon. Email, YouTube, podcasts, chatbots, forums, communities, whatever makes sense for your audience. And so, I talk about this idea of a goldfish hamster, like a famster, right? And that's how I beat my competition, and that's what I did with my old brand, and I'm still doing it with new brands now. It's what I teach people to do now, is so many people are just stuck on this hamster wheel in a goldfish bowl. And many of them are there because, there'll be people listening to this or watching this right now saying, yeah, but Ben, like, I'm doing absolutely nothing to interact with my customers. I'm purely focusing on Amazon and it's working just fine. To which I say, well, just be careful, because many of your competitors are cottoning on and now they are starting to do the things that you are not. And that's how they will beat you. And before you know it, you've lost. And also, I would say, is when it comes to selling, and this is what was so important for me, is the buyers really liked everything I'd built around the business to protect it from purely just being a quote unquote Amazon business. So we had raving fans who would buy all our stuff. We had all these people following us on YouTube, following us on Instagram, who every time we launched a product would buy it, who we could interact with in the DMs and get great reviews from. And our competitors didn't have that. So that's why every time we launched a product, we crushed them. And the buyers of our business thought, well, that's really attractive. What are we going to invest in? Are we going to, spend a couple $1,000,000 on Ben's business, which has got all this built-in growth for us because he's got all these relationships with customers? Or are we going to go pay somebody else for their business, which is stuck on a hamster wheel in a goldfish bowl?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a really apt analogy. I think we see, especially a lot of sellers who don't differentiate themselves enough on Amazon, especially like resellers. They're not doing enough to catch the attention of their audience. I mean, if I know if I go on Amazon and I find a object or like whatever I'm searching for, and it's especially if they're a reseller, and I find it for $10 from one seller and I find it for $8 from the other, I'm just gonna go for the $8 one. And if if I had purchased from that previous brand before, because why would I not? I don't have any sort of loyalty to them. So I guess coming from that perspective, I mean, you mentioned a few, but what would be some suggestions for actually effectively connecting to these customers for people who just are starting
Yeah,
out?
I mean, tons of different ways. I find sometimes the easiest ways to explain this is actually to just give worked examples, and then people can kind of think, oh, I could apply that to my business like this or like that. So I can give you a few. Here's one from my first brand, which was that fitness brand called Beast Gear. So we sold a variety of products, including a line of boxing products. And in boxing, before you put on your gloves, you have to wrap your hands with boxing hand wraps, which are like bandages. They protect your hands. You put them over your hands before you put your hands in your gloves. We sold those. So when you bought them, there would be a little insert that said, scan this code, go to this URL for a video to teach you how to properly wrap your hands. And customers, pretty much everyone would go to that because they want to know how to use the product properly, right? And I wanted to educate my customers so they had a good experience. So they scanned the code and immediately land in my chatbot. So that's contact point number one. They're in my chatbot, and now I can market to them and provide them with helpful content that makes them know, like, and trust me, and occasionally send them something promotional. But of course, I promised them a video about wrapping their hands, so I have to deliver that. So the second thing that happens is, within that chatbot, I immediately say, here is the video I promised you. And you click the link and you land in YouTube. And you get the video. And the video was a crappy, organic, rough and ready video filmed on my phone of me at my kitchen table teaching people how to wrap their hands. And I did nothing to promote that video other than send it to my existing customers who just bought my boxing hand wraps in order to give them a good educational experience. That video has had over 6 million views. I certainly didn't sell 6 million pairs of boxing hand wraps. So what happened? Well, all the customers that I drove to it got a good experience and learned how to wrap their hands, and a whole bunch of them would leave me a review. Many of them would like the video and subscribe to the channel, and now I can promote them on other stuff to do with my brand, both helpful content that's educational, but also like marketing content, like showing them other products. YouTube got a positive signal. Hey, people are watching this video and they're enjoying it. We're going to start showing it to people who don't know Ben's brand, but do have the same problem. How do I wrap my hands for boxing? So suddenly my video starts getting shown to people who are not my customers, and they all start watching it and liking it and subscribing. And guess what? In the video and in the description is a link to the Amazon listing. Also my website if they wanted it. And guess what? Amazon loves external traffic. So now we have two algorithms creating positive feedback loops that are unstoppably moving each other. We have existing Amazon customers that I'm getting anyway ranking my video in YouTube, and we have YouTube viewers ranking my product in Amazon. That is escaping the Amazon goldfish bowl and escaping the hamster wheel at the same time. So that's like one example. And of course, all these customers, then they're now subscribed on YouTube. I cross-pollinate them in the chatbot to go check out my social media channels where I interact with them. And they're probably going to go check out my website where they're going to fill in a lead magnet and I'm going to get their email address. Meanwhile, my competitors are asleep at the wheel, not doing any of this crap. So I just absolutely destroy them.
All right. Yeah. No. Thank you for that breakdown. It's awesome. Those external
that's
streams.
just like one thing. That's like one video. Imagine what you can do if you get creative about all the different. It doesn't have to be YouTube. Like where do your customers show up? Maybe they're listening to podcasts. You can do all sorts of things. And people just need to treat their e-commerce business and especially the Amazon component of it as like a big boy grown-up business rather than just be like, oh yeah, I have this Amazon account where I sell stuff. It's like, no. Act like your own favorite brands that you love act towards you. Treat your business with respect, and it will go much, much further than if you treat it as just like a hustle, you're putting a ceiling on what it can achieve.
Absolutely. It's not just an LLC, it's a brand. Treat it away. Yeah, absolutely.
So past that though, when building that brand and selling it, what is something that you think you could have really done differently? Because while you did get to that point and you sold it off, which is very good, that's what everybody aims to do with their brands. What is something that you think you could have done even better before getting to that point?
Yeah, I should have taken the brand to the USA. So I started the brand in the UK, which is fine. I don't regret that. That made sense. I'm in the UK. I didn't know anything about business at the time. It made sense to me to start in the UK. No problem. I then went to mainland Europe. Fine. But after that, I should have gone to the US. Instead, the mistake I made was I decided I wanted to be first in Australia and first in the Middle East. Australia didn't work out that well. Not a huge market. I should have really known that. Middle East, I thought was about to explode. I should instead have gone to the US. And I think if I'd done that, the business, and the time I sold it, we were doing about $6 million a year in sales. I think for very, very little additional effort, perhaps a couple of extra freelancers, I think the business could have been doing 4 times that. And so that's a mistake I made. But hey, you live and learn. And I didn't have to pay for an MBA to learn that lesson, right? Instead, I actually got paid to learn that lesson. Just not quite as much as I might have got paid if I'd taken the business.
Hey, still learned it, still made money doing it. That's what counts.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome. So one other thing I want to talk about. I know you did put out a book, and I wanted to see. Could you detail us a little bit more about your book? And
sure. Yeah. So the book, I wrote it. It took about 18 months. It came out just a couple months ago in October. So it's called Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. There you go. There's a copy. Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. And I wrote it because, well, I can tell you the moment I decided to write it, actually. I'd been thinking about writing a book for a while. I thought I've got a book in me. I know a bunch of stuff. I've been here. I've done this. And I wish that I'd had like a useful resource when I started. And indeed, as I was going along, because it's not just a book for newbies. But in spring 2022, I was at an e-commerce conference, and there was this guy on stage, and I kind of stopped watching him for a few minutes and looked at the audience, and they were eating out of the palm of his hand. He was casting a spell on them, and everything he was saying was kind of generally fairly like all right. It was okay. It was true. But he wasn't giving us any examples of anything he had actually done. It was all theory this, theory that, where you could do this, you could do that. And I thought, right, I need to come out of stealth mode here and write a book that's a set of timeless business principles applied to our world of e-commerce with the benefit of my experience in giving case study examples of what I've actually done in the past and what I'm continuing to do now. I felt like that was missing. There's a lot of good and great books about e-commerce, and some specifically about the Amazon platform, which are really good books. But I think the problem with a lot of them is they go out of date fast because they're very technical. It's very like build your landing page using this tool and download this thing. This hack is working right now. I wanted to make something timeless that's still going to be useful in 5-10 years. So it's a roadmap from ideation to exit. And I think it's the kind of book you could read perhaps the first time cover to cover, and then like dig into specific sections whenever you need it. And I feel like there's value in there for someone who's just starting and someone who's doing 8 figures a year. So yeah, I'm really proud of it. The reaction I've got so far has been great. Some really smart people have said kind things about it. One of the first blurbs I got was from Ryan Daniel Moran, who wrote 12 Months to $1 Million. That was really kind of him. So yeah, took me a long time. I was pretty fed up of it after being about 12 months in, but I managed to stick it out and finish it off for about another 6. And yeah, there it is. It's out.
It's awesome. Well, I'm gonna have to get a copy.
Cool. Thanks. You can make sure you leave me a review.
I will.
That's an interesting thing that I've learned, actually. You learn a lot in everything you do in business. And I've learned that in something interesting about reviews when I've been writing this book, or just after writing the book when I launched it, because let's say I buy this mouse, right? It might cost me I don't know how much this mouse cost me, but it might cost me the same as a paperback book, let's say, right? But the resistance to buying a book is slightly higher because there's a buy-in there. You know that you're going to have to spend a portion of your time reading a good third of that book at least before you decide if it's really that good or not. And so even if you've got all great reviews with a book, I think there's like some sort of threshold. I don't know if it's 50 reviews or 100 reviews, but you really got to hit that level before you're going to see that real uptick in sales. It's really, really interesting. And it's also interesting because, just like in the physical product space, you win by building quality products and creating a real relationship with your audience. The book space on Amazon has become flooded with Me Too crap, a lot of it generated by AI. And people are worried about it, but I'm not worried about it because customers aren't stupid. And over time, like cream rises to the top and people can tell what's a legit book that people have actually put time and effort into.
I think you can really tell, honestly. Like, a lot of people have books out there that they put out there, but like, for example, Hormozy is the first person that comes to mind. Like what he did with offers and leads, it blew up beyond what I've really ever seen happen in the space when it comes to books. But that's because the content was so good that people couldn't help not share it with other people.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about Hormozy's books, and I like both of them, is people are very forgiving because, okay, it's not a fiction book, obviously, but the writing isn't actually that good. But the content is so good, and that's what matters, right? There's real substance there and original ideas, and there's so much Me Too junk out there. It's trying to overcome that noise. It can be quite frustrating.
Yeah. So what? Another thing, I know a lot of people like to talk about in the e-commerce space. I mean, you see it on social media and everything. Everybody likes to talk about the positives, like doing X numbers online, but I feel like there's something that a lot of people don't necessarily like talking about, which is some of the dark sides of the space in general. Could you give a little bit of your experience with that? Because I know when we were getting started, there's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of things people don't think of when they're getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, I spent the entire day alone in my office at home, which is why today I spend most of the day at a co-working space, right? And so many of us spend so much time alone on our e-commerce businesses. It's a very lonely place. We don't have necessarily people to bounce ideas off of, which is why it's so important to join online communities. And especially when we're starting out, we've got to, I'm constantly having imposter syndrome, right? Every time I go to speak on stage, I kind of feel like, do I really belong here? And when you're starting out your e-commerce business and you're maybe telling your family and friends, they're like, they might not be that supportive. It's, really? Like, you don't have any business experience? Like, don't be silly. Stick to your day job. Oh, that's a risky investment. I don't know about that. And it's really hard. And people don't talk about it enough. And the other thing that frustrates me is what I call entrepreneurial porn. So you turn on Facebook, you turn on Instagram, you turn on TikTok, and it's all these douchebags in front of sports cars, with Brazilian model girlfriends, most of whom have never actually owned an e-commerce business, haven't got a clue what they're doing. They hired that sports car, and that's not their girlfriend. And they're selling a dream that doesn't exist. And they're not talking about the reality of real big boy grown-up business. One of my favorite podcasts right now is called Operators. And the guys that do it are all 9-figure entrepreneurs. And none of them are talking about they're not talking about private jets or Brazilian model girlfriends or flashy sports car. They're talking about, advertising spend, and they're talking about contribution margin, and they're talking about hiring and all this unsexy stuff. And that's what it's really about, rather than all this frustrating entrepreneurial porn. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of dark sides to e-commerce, not to mention the bullshit gurus who are trying to sell you, they produce all this fake porn content to try to sell you a 10 grand course that is a terrible course anyway, and B, they're not qualified to produce. So I think people just really need to watch out. I nearly got scammed out of 50 grand by a fake guru when I first started. I wrote about it in the book. Thankfully, I was talked out of it by my dad, who was always, for that first brand especially, like a real mentor, and a great kind of sounding board. So I would encourage people especially to just make sure that you can find yourself. They don't have to be experienced in business, but just like a common sense kind of sounding board person to bounce things off of, and sense check things in your business as you're going through it. Whether you're a beginner, whether you're doing 8 figures, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I do like that you pointed out the difference. Like you can just it's like the books that we talked about, like the AI generated books versus a book that somebody really put their time into, and the gurus versus the guys you're talking about that run the Operator podcast. I listen to Naval all the time, and guys like that like are talking about business at a really high level, and none of them talk about. None of them talk about Lamborghinis or have pictures with them with a bunch of models and stuff like that to pitch a course that they're trying to sell.
Completely. Yeah. I think Hormozy shared not long ago a photograph of his old crappy car. And I think at that point he was generating, extraordinary amounts of money. But he had no interest in having a flashy car, of course. So yeah, I think we need to just talk a little bit more about all sides of e-commerce. It's kind of like, you go on, forgetting, e-commerce for a moment, you go on any social media, and let's say you're scanning Facebook or Instagram and you see your friends or people that you used to know, and every photograph is like a snapshot into all the positive sides of their life, but nobody posts the negative stuff. And so you start to feel jealous that everybody else has got it going on and you need to sort yourself out. And it's the same way with entrepreneurship. Like people just post the good stuff. And I think we need to talk a lot more about the difficult stuff and, what went wrong today and what am I struggling with now? And what's the current challenge in my business? Apart from anything else, we can learn from each other doing that. And that's why it's so important, I think, to join masterminds where you can bounce ideas off each other.
Definitely. And seeing the stuff that you're talking about on social media, I look at entrepreneurship and working out the same way. Like it's not something that you just hit it right off the bat and like all of a sudden you've got a 6-pack and you're shredded. It's something that takes a lot of time, and the guys that have been doing it the longest are the ones that seem to be the best at it, or the ones.
Yeah, totally. And there's no rush either. Like apart from anything else, we're all living longer, right? So
yeah,
things overnight successes take a long time. And it's about playing the long game. I didn't take any money. I didn't pay myself at all out of my first brand until the last year that I owned it. And then I paid myself. I probably could have paid myself earlier, but I didn't need to because I hadn't quit my day job yet. I think in entrepreneurship, or people who like to think they know about entrepreneurship, risk taking is really sexy. They say, oh, we're entrepreneurs, we take risks. That's true. And I do like taking risks, but I like taking smart, calculated risks. So these guys that are like, oh, quit your job and go all in on your business. It's like, no, don't be stupid. Like, you've got bills to pay. You've got a family. Yeah. You've got a mortgage. Like, don't quit your job. Like, start a business, and hopefully later you can quit your job. Don't be a dumbass.
Exactly. I've seen that quite a bit. They'll like quit your job, start selling this. It's like, well, you got to take that money and you got to put it back into the business for a long time. Like a lot of people, just like you were saying, a lot of people don't take money out for a while because this is a very cash. If we're talking about specifically selling on Amazon, selling physical products on e-commerce, it's a cash flow heavy business. You need a lot of cash. The cash that you get from it needs to go right back in.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a whole section about this in the book. So many people that I talk with, either as a client of mine or when we're trying to prepare their business for exit with e-com brokers, the number one stumbling block we come up against is cash flow. And part of it is because they failed to properly validate their unit economics when they were bringing out their products. And it's not their fault because they weren't taught how to do it, because the idiots that created the YouTube videos that they're watching didn't teach them how to do it, because they didn't know either, because they're fake gurus. So on paper, their product is profitable, but actually it's not profitable enough. It doesn't have a high enough ROI. So they're not getting enough free cash out to go buy more inventory, because the cash conversion cycle in e-commerce is so slow. And I wrote a whole section on the book about how you can improve that by, for example, negotiating better payment terms, negotiating down your costs, paying for any services that you're using, paying for your PPC on credit cards to give yourself more time, by actually paying your freight forwarders on a payment term, by taking out loans where it makes sense. And so many people don't understand this. I talk to people all the time and I'm like, so how long have you been working with this manufacturer? And they're like, oh, 3.5 years. And I'm like, great. What are your payment terms? And they're like, oh, well, I pay a 30% deposit and I pay 70% when the goods are ready to be shipped. And I'm like, oh my God, you've been working with them for 3.5 years. You should be paying like 0 to 10% down, a little bit when it's ready, and the rest after 60 days, maybe 90 or 120 if you can. That way you're selling the products before you've even paid for them. And we will fix people's businesses, borderline overnight by negotiating better terms and demonstrating to the manufacturing partners, hey, you give us better terms, we can afford to order more, and we can both grow our businesses.
No, that's awesome. Definitely ways to improve. So if anybody wanted to get in contact with you that was listening, or in contact with either one of your companies,
sure.
Where could they reach you at?
Yeah, lots of ways. If you want to get in touch with me, email me, ben@benleonard.pro, or I'm all over social. My handle is benleonardpro. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm, super kind of extroverted kind of guy, so give me a shout. I'm always happy to talk. If you want to plan your exit, whether that's, in 3 months or 2.5 years, it doesn't matter. Contact us at ecombrokers.co.uk or email me, ben@ecombrokers.co.uk. If you want to get the book, here's my shameless plug. It's called Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. It's on Amazon. I heard you can buy stuff there. And if you're interested in joining the next round of Product Empire, which is my non-BS, definitely not $5,000 course, that's at product-empire.com, and it opens up again in February. So that's kind of like a course that kind of goes deeper than everything in the book.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here, Ben. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Sign off here.
Cheers, guys.